back, everyone, to another episode of Spooky Japan Podcast. Hoping everyone is doing well today. Today we have a very special guest with us, Leon. How you doing, Leon?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for
He's
having
joining us all the way from the UK. So,
me. Yeah.
Leon, for everyone out there who may not be familiar with who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe talk about your book as well.
So hello, I'm Leon Mcanally. I have just published the first dark tourism guidebook to span the whole of the UK, with over 300 places. So places all linked to deaths, suffering, tragedy. So whether that's kind of man-made disasters, natural disasters, things like that, really, that are in my book. So.
Sounds interesting. How did you get into writing this book?
Oh, well, it kind of really stems because I actually grew up in a small historic town called Bury St Edmunds. So I think it influenced my interest in kind of history. So learning about kind of the grisly kind of Tudor period of King Henry VIII. Yeah, so I had an interest in kind of history. But then after school, I went to college and studied travel and tourism. And while I was studying travel and tourism, this term came up called dark tourism. And the teacher told us it's kind of places people visit, like Auschwitz, the catacombs of Paris, and Ground Like Zero. And it kind of instantly, I kind of went home, was looking at kind of different sites that fell under this dark tourism term. And yeah, I did kind of a PowerPoint on different places in college. And then I went to university because I kind of knew they focused on kind of this term more within university than at college level. And I kind of focused a lot of my kind of work around dark tourism, kind of the motivations why people go and visit these sites, if it's kind of for to honor people, like, and educational kind of purposes, and kind of the other issues that these kind of places suffer from. After kind of university, it was kind of, I was intrigued to go and visit this place. So I visited Auschwitz, the catacombs of Paris, loads of kind of different famous cemeteries across Europe and things. And I was just had visited the catacombs of Paris. And I think it kind of inspired this kind of inspiration. And I was thinking, God, like, there's so many sites within England that are similar to dark tourism sites that I'd known across Europe. I was like, but they're not highlighted as dark tourism in England, really. So yeah, that kind of set me off on a mission of kind of 3 years, really, in publishing this book.
That sounds interesting. How many of those sites have you visited, or also did you get some of the research for your book?
I've visited a number of the sites. I have visited a few of the sites. I've also worked closely with a lot of the attractions, in writing kind of their entries and building kind of a relationship with kind of each of the sites, because it's been a kind of integral kind of part of the process of my book, is making sure the factual history element is correct. Because you can go on the internet and it's just so unreliable, or the information is out of date and things. So it's simple little things. There was a place where it was believed the last public execution happened on a particular day, and that was actually out of date. There'd been some new kind of evidence and research by a university on this particular site, and they'd found that it was actually a few years later, of another gentleman who was the last public execution. So it was kind of, yeah, making sure my kind of factual information was up to date, really.
Do you find that some of the places that are not noted are just as fascinating as the places that are people that do say, oh yeah, this is that, we've been there, and everyone goes there. But the other places that are not noted have just as much good history and just as much maybe a macabre history to it. And it can be just as gruesome and just as terrifying or horrifying, but it brings a no, you're kidding. Really? Like you, like that part of you, right?
Yeah,
I think more I like the unnoticed places more than the noticed places. I think because there's always a room for those kind of places in any book or in anything. I think they're just as important. I think people should try to visit the unnoticed places too.
yeah, definitely. Like within, but there is noticeable places like the Tower of London,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so many other little places that are not well known and noticeable that are within my book. Kind of that was kind of one of the purposes I wanted to get more
Mm-hmm.
places that are not known about within my
Mm-hmm.
book. Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
simple place. Um, it's one of two places in England that is correct that dates back to a particular place, and that's only two of England. It's not
Mm-hmm.
well known, and it's 20 minutes down the road from me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go underneath the church, and it's
Mm-hmm.
filled with like 2,000 bones of people. Um, and it's just not known. Like you even say to people in Northampton, where I live, oh, like, do you know this place is 20 minutes down the road? And they're like, no. And I'm like, how do you not? Like, it's a fascinating place. Like,
Yeah. I mean, gee whiz, I think they deserve just as much credit as the big places too.
yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I think because it's so secluded and so out of the way with everyone else saying, "Well, where can I go to this place?" I said, "Well, I'll take you here. It's a lot more fun, and you might find a lot more interesting."
Well, yeah, yeah. I like it's the Tower of London is a well-known place, so the history is kind of well known. And
Mm-hmm.
go to another place that's not so well known,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you like learn its history, and you realise that place has just been as important and kind of like pivotal in history
Mm-hmm.
as places that are well known. Like I went to a
Mm-hmm.
nuclear bunker, and it played a substantial like role kind of in the Cold War period, and
Mm-hmm.
you think, God, why is this history element not known about?
Yeah. It's just like, well, sometimes they say, "Oh, we're not going to talk about that," or "That's not important. Like, let's do this or the other place, right?"
Mm,
No, 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 because that place probably has just as much. It had to do with a lot of things that went on today because of back then, right?
yeah,
And it probably started out in that one area, and it just moved away from that area. So where it started is a place where everything starts. And that
mm,
there's always that one little place where everything starts, and it just carries on someplace else.
oh yeah,
I like those little unknown places. I like going to these places that nobody even thinks of going in paranormal. And everyone says, "Wow, it's not in our books." Yeah, I'm going to take you there because it's not in the books. That's why. And
yeah.
it's
I think there's a kind of fascination with kind of like you said, people going to places that are not well known because you can go away from it and tell people and be like, "Oh, did you know of this?" And they're like, "Oh no," and you intrigue them to go and
yeah,
visit as well because it's not a well known site and stuff.
yeah. I think it's not in the books of what we call macabre or paranormal history or something that really bad happened or something that happened there because it's so far back nobody was really interested in. But I said, you know what, it's just as important, it's just as interesting, and it's just as probably has more spirits in there or more crazy stuff happening there to this day. And yeah, nobody, they call it a tourist place, right? But you wouldn't think of going there as a paranormal haunted place because it is a paranormal haunted place. But yeah, you know, whatever,
Usually
right?
places that have a disaster happen. So thusly we know this in Japan. If
Mm-hmm.
a disaster happened, more than likely even a natural disaster is gonna end up being haunted. I mean, how many ghosts
Yeah.
do we have because of like tsunamis? And then after a tsunami hits Japan, the
Yeah.
paranormal activity in that area just picks up for a little while.
Oh, it changes it totally, right?
Yeah.
But
It and the land change, not just the land changes, but the air changes, and it becomes heavier, it becomes darker, it becomes like it's almost like you can't breathe, like it's like right in here, and you could feel it in here. That's when it changes, that's when it becomes really interesting. And I say, I want to go, and everyone says, you're nuts. I go, I know. That's right. That's it. Yeah, I am nuts. That's where we're going.
See, here in Japan, it's different for research that we don't really have a lot of the places listed in like a library or public records or something. You
No,
basically have to find like someone older in that area who kind of knows about the history, and they'll tell you the story. But it also depends on if you want to take that as a reliable source or not. But that's also probably the only source you're going to get in Japan about that
mm,
history.
yeah,
do you think that's more um what's the word? Oh, I can't think of it. Like it creates more meaning to that story with a local telling you.
mm, I believe so, because the local older people really cherish their history, and they try to pass it on, but there's a lot of people that don't want to believe it, right? And it makes it even harder to even find somebody who will talk about it. And you, and then you better have a long day. Yeah, you better have a free afternoon, because it's going to take that long to learn.
Um,
um Japan is almost like England in a way, because the crazy stuff happened right in the past, right?
yeah,
You got a lot of things that you really don't want to talk about, right? Yeah, and then you got a lot of fighting, you got a lot of battles, you got a lot of bloodshed, death. Like it was like a mixture of whatever you want, right? It's like a salad. You put all the ingredients in a salad, and this is what you get in the end. That's exactly what it is like here. Um, it's almost like it's crazy, because now city tax has gone up so high that the people who own these haunted properties have to give it up because they can't pay the taxes now. So you're finding that more architects are coming in, more engineers are coming in, building buildings in those places where they shouldn't be, right? So guess what? You get a haunted place. So sometimes you'll get somebody where you're walking through the walls, and they go, "Oh, okay, yeah, bye." Like, and yeah, and then it's because of land. That's why.
God,
Yeah, and you want, and they charge a lot of money. Like you'll find maybe rent maybe 10,000
God,
to a month. Yeah,
oh my God,
yeah, and it's really expensive, really beautiful, high class neighborhood in a beautiful apartment buildings are being built, and then yeah, guess what? The land is haunted. So yeah, you're gonna get this and that coming out of your wall. I mean,
That 10,000 is also in yen, so whatever that's going to be in your currency
it's
over there. Then a lot of people, 10,000 yen is definitely different than American
yeah,
money.
or European money.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty expensive, right? We're seeing really expensive, beautiful apartments are being built, but the land is so there's been so much bloodshed and so much death on the land that it's embedded in the soil.
yeah,
So you will get soldiers from here up walking through the walls because they were cut in half.
uh,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's what happens in this, and unfortunately, it's near Tokyo too. Um, there's a lot of places around Tokyo that is it's the most it's deemed the number one haunted city
God.
in all of Japan. Yeah. It's just, yeah, a lot of crazy stuff happened. A lot of stuff that you don't want to talk about happened too. So we're hearing that a lot of that happened. And one time we were looking at property to buy a house, and my son said, "You don't want to live there." I go, "Why?" Because I took a picture. And he said, "Look at the hand coming out of of the soil." He said, "Do you see that?" I go, "Hey, what's that?" He goes, "Take a look closer." And I blew up the picture with my camera on my phone where I took the picture, and he goes, "Look at that." I go, "Oh, you're right. It's a hand doing like this." And I go, "Yeah, we're not gonna buy that." No, and the land wasn't that expensive either. It was pretty cheap, right? No wonder, right? You almost would need a clairvoyant, a person who can see spirits, a person who can tell you if the land is clean or not to move in.
Move in.
Yep, you need a medium. Yep, like Amanda, where her apartment is, there's a lot of portals where she is. Her place is haunted too.
Oh my god.
I think it's most of Japan though, because it's such an old country that I mean a lot has happened in Japan. There's a reason why it has like 1,000 urban legends and ghost stories.
Yeah.
And then if you're into horror movies, the Japanese horror movies, every single one of them came from like an urban legend or
Or something
ghost
happened a
story
long
in
time ago.
Japan.
Yeah.
Hmm.
uh Long time ago, divorcing your wife was unheard of, right? So the next best thing would be or bye. And that's what became haunted, right?
Oh god. That's of England. There's just a lot of kind of history to share here and stuff and whatnot. And I think a lot of these kind of old sites do have a lot of kind of history,
Hmm.
or they have their own kind of stories, really.
Hmm. Sometimes, us being in the 20th century, that didn't happen. Like, nah, really? You go, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it did happen. Yeah. Like even in England, they say, nah, that couldn't happen. They go, it did. It did. Like the guillotine and having your head chopped off. Yeah, it happened. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And there's some even I think there are more residue energy because of that, right?
yeah, definitely.
What was the most I like using this word. What was the most frightening place that you've ever visited? That's probably that you had to do it for your book.
Oh,
Uh-oh. No, he's thinking.
um, not kind of the ghost aspect so much.
No, but creepy. The most creepy. Like the
Think
hair on your back goes, ooh.
Could be like history wise too.
Yeah.
You're just like knowing it has
Yeah.
dark
uh,
history would be the place you're like, I don't know if I want to come back here knowing the
Yeah.
history on this place.
To
it,
make the hair on your back go up and go
when
stand up and go, yikes.
one of the places kind of I visited that I've spoken about a lot that was kind of just an unusual. Um, it was a kind of weird, strange, kind of fascinating at the same time. There's an old jail called Little Dean Jail, um, and it's down in Gloucestershire. And there was serial killers called Fred and Rosemary West, and they killed a number of girls in the 90s. It came out, and the gentleman has this old prison, but he has loads of artifacts of famous kind of people like the Cray twins. He has their suits and loads of serial killer possessions and stuff. And like one of the cells, um, like each cell was kind of dedicated to different kind of people, and one of these cells is dedicated to these infamous serial killers. And he's actually got like some of their possessions on display, with articles from when it came out in the newspaper and everything. And it was like walking into that cell, and it was like a shrine to these serial killers. And it was just, I went, in the time we were there for 3 hours, I went back to that cell 4 times because of how weird I found it, but yet fascinating at the same time. Like, it was weird for me to go into this cell and see possessions like it was being kind of glorified.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it made me wonder the person who owned the whole kind of prison as well, like how he'd sourced like these items and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
what kind of was running through his mind. Like, there was letters. He'd been obviously in contact as well with other people who were in prison, and they'd
Mm-hmm.
sent letters, they'd sent him belongings to put on display. So it was like this
Mm-hmm.
glorification of these kind of serial killers, really,
Mm-hmm.
and famous people.
Do you think the energy was trying to draw you into the room too?
Pardon?
The energy that it had, the energy, the effect that it had in that room was trying to pull you in there and make
Yeah.
you, you know, like you can't explain it. I don't know if I can't, I don't think I can't explain it, right? I don't think no, I don't think I can explain it. It's like you gotta go, you gotta go in that room, you gotta go in that room. And it's like, okay, you're coming in this room with me. I'm gonna show you something, right? Like like it was trying to make you take a look at this and that and the articles and the items on the being on displayed. I think it had a way pushing you in there so you can't leave.
Yeah, yeah, it did feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
I went back there 4 times at the end of the day, and the whole of the visit. But like a number of sites, like I have said within my book, like there's sites that are haunted and things, and there's ghosts and stuff. But one of the important aspects is I've relayed that history before I've said about there being kind of a ghost or something linked to the
Mm-hmm.
story, because I think that in like England and America, I don't know how it is in Japan, it's kind of, let's jump to it being haunted, it's paranormal, what I can grasp. But for me, I've wanted to make sure that before saying that, I've given the story, I've given the reason
Mm-hmm.
why like it's believed there's a ghost there or something. Because I think the history to that is just as important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can kind of understand really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think like there's different things like this dark tourism term.
Mm-hmm.
It's an umbrella term for loads of other things. So yes, you've got this really macabre kind of aspect to it, but then you've
Mm-hmm.
also got this kind of educational aspect
Mm-hmm.
and this
Mm-hmm.
kind of honourable experience as well when going to sites. And on the
Mm-hmm.
same, you've, like there's simple memorials to coal mining disasters and things like that are within my book because they're not even well known about, but they are significant at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day. And I've wanted to show kind of that community aspect of communities are wanting these events to be remembered and the people who have died to be known at the end of the day. So there's kind of these, yeah, different ends of the spectrum. Like you're not going to go to the Tower of London
Mm-hmm.
and get the same experience as visiting the likes of Princess Diana's grave at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go to Princess Diana's grave as a kind of somber, memorable kind of experience, whereas you're going to go to Tower London for this kind of gruesome
Mm-hmm.
theatre kind of experience. audience, really.
Yeah.
So I went off on a bit of a tangent.
I think you're giving it, you're humanizing it for what it should be, and giving it their names, giving them a part where, yes, you were important. Yes, you had a life. Yes, this is what your job was, or this is what your history was all about, and this is who you really were. And it's like giving it a proper face to go on, which I
Yeah,
think is, and a lot of things, a lot of books don't. A lot of writers don't do that. They mention, well, this is this person, that person died there, and yeah, and that was it. Like, we'll be dang, okay. Like, they don't give them a proper face and a proper whatever you call it, right? What do you call it, Amanda? Like, I'm stuck. Okay, help.
Yeah,
I,
where you're like you're saying, humanize it compared to just,
Yeah,
yeah, the lord of the manor, whatever, compared to
yeah,
actually.
yeah. I
to give a
I
bit of
think.
stuff to each kind of person.
Mhm. uh, I think it, and because um when they were digging for coal, or when they were mining for whatever, people did try, um they weren't paid a lot of money.
No,
No, they probably had illness to them. They probably had something in their lungs all the time, right? So they all probably died a horrible, painful death. um and people don't want to say, yeah, it happened. Well, it did happen. Sorry, I hate to burst your bubble, but yeah, we're not gonna and said, no, you can't show that because that's not the nice part of it. Nothing's nice about history, right? You can't put whipped cream and strawberries on top of it, because that's not what it really was, right?
yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, it's heritage that hurts. At the end of the day, history
Yeah,
is.
but I think it's necessary, because I think children don't know. I think the young people should learn, and it doesn't matter where you're in America, where you're in Japan, or where you're in England. I think all children have to learn about something, about their past, about the past lives, and how they lived, and how hard they worked,
Yeah, definitely.
even for a little shilling, right?
Yeah, like that is kind of one aspect I'm keen on. Is it's important to get the younger generation known at the end of the day about aspects of our history. Like I work in a care home as well,
Mm-hmm.
into the older generation about kind of the war kind of period and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's they want it to be told. They want it to be known at the end of the day. They want it to be passed down. But it's making sure it's been passed down correctly at the end of the day. And that's why I've wanted to work with a lot of the places within my book,
Mm-hmm.
because it's important that whatever history I'm writing about is factually correct and then being passed down at the end of the day and known about.
Mm-hmm. The older generation that you work with caregiver, do they tell you a lot of stories too?
Pardon?
The older people that work with, when you're working with elderly, do they tell you a lot of stories too?
Yeah, yeah, they do share a lot of stories and stuff, and what it was kind of like to live in different periods of time and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's kind of been eye opening working with them, and I think it's kind of speared my determination on when I was writing as well, because it made me think of I'm writing about a particular generation's history at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day. While yes, it is awful for the people who was involved in a disaster or a tragedy. And obviously, that's an important part of the history. But then, also on the outer scope of that, it's also linked to a particular generation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to kind of encompass that as well, because it's that's their generation's history as well.
Mm-hmm.
You over there, is the younger generation as interested into history, or they used to feel like they're less in history than like the older generation?
So we do have like, sorry, like history lessons and things like that. Like that, you mean they're like, are they just as interested in history?
I mean, actually want to go and see the historical places, learn more about them, not just like the required history class from school.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think so. But it's gonna depend on how that traction connects with children.
Mm.
Because the way you're going to connect with children is going to be different to the way you're going to connect with adults when visiting a place.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of, the thing is, more adults will be interested in maybe reading kind of exhibit boards and maybe listening, whereas children want something more interactive, and kind of, it might be like simple things, like, so a lot of our attractions do like your adult aspect, but then you'll do like this hidden game kind of, you've got to find these objects as a kid throughout kind of the experience, yet it will share history while you're doing this at a kind of kids aspects level. So children are interesting to go to these places, but then it's down to when the child, like children get there, like parents take their children there, it's then down to how the attraction then gets that information, connects kind of with children, really. um
Because there's a lot of places in England that can scare the bejeebers out of a child too, you know. So you want to be very careful about how you teach this child what happened there. Like you don't want to share the gory parts because there's a lot of gory parts of it, right?
yeah, yeah, there is a kind of lot of gory parts. There's one place that I visited called like a sick to death place, that looks at kind of disease and things like that throughout the medieval period and kind of autopsies. But
Mm-hmm.
it is, yes, it's factual information that I think the adult takes away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then you've also got a kind of very interactive, like there's smells, there's touches that can like interact with children, and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of take that aspect of the history away of what it was, the smells were like and what things may have looked like and stuff like that. So I think you need to bring that immersive kind of experience into that to engage kind of with children a bit more.
But I believe 20th century children are a lot more informed.
Mm,
They know a lot more than we think we do. I think they've read a lot more than what we think they've read. So I mean it's like, yes, you teach about, you keep up with the times. Right.
yeah,
And uh, uh, I don't know, like my children know a lot more than I think they do, and they say, oh, I already know about that. I go, okay, like, whoops,
Well, part of the issue with the younger generation, though, is the attention span compared to like the older generation, because they didn't
Yeah,
have the cell phones or the TikTok or whatever
yeah,
to be going through. Where now everything is like either a 3 minute video or less, so you only had to pay attention for
yeah.
3 minutes compared to actually trying to explain history.
Yeah, the attention span of a child, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that is
You
one
don't.
thing that's a huge difference. That's why compared to older folks, you can go and actually they'll listen and they actually want to experience and hear the history compared to the younger generations who just want the couple minute outline of it,
Hmm.
and then
yeah,
they just kind of lose focus.
yeah, it's very different.
Um.
We're probably going to museums in the future where it's you just play a video instead of reading something, and it's like it's just a couple minute brief history on it, where it's like quick and to the point.
Well,
Yeah,
this happened there and that happened that. That's it. Bye. You're like,
Yeah,
amazing.
because they know that's the attention span now of the younger
Yeah.
generation. There,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I wish that we would have more interested in paranormal in Japan because there isn't any, right? It's just us. Don't laugh. I'm serious, okay? Like nobody else has a podcast, just us. Like
Really?
no, we're
paranormal,
the only
yeah,
ones that.
we've been looking. There really isn't any. There are some people who do make a living or wrote books off of the urban legends here in Japan. However, they don't consider themselves part of the paranormal. They just because it's more storytelling to them.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
Where we've reached out to them and they're just like, I'll get completely ignored. Irene, if she does get something back, it's ha ha ha.
like
But yeah, they
that's
don't
about it.
necessarily.
That's
Yeah, they
funny.
don't consider it. I know everywhere else it's like, well, isn't it urban legends part of the paranormal? Like I think they consider it more storytelling because even they are just like, nah, I don't do anything paranormal.
No,
But as
I
someone also told me, it's because Japan is more superstitious than even religious.
yeah.
Oh.
And then I thought about it. I'm like, they really are. Like, yeah, anytime we go to a shrine, if it is popular or if
Hmm.
it wants to succeed, it has to have some kind of gimmick. Like, come here, do this, you'll find true love. Come here, do this, you'll get more abundance and money. Come
Yeah.
here, do this, you get good luck and whatever.
Or you'll even pass your exam if you come here, or
Yeah,
you'll
there's
find
also some
love.
of those too. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's shrines
yeah,
with those. There's some different shrines with that too for like the education. It also
yeah.
sells a little amulet
Or if you
shrine.
want a woman to be more fertile, you go to this shrine and you'll
Yeah, there is
become more
fertility one.
fertile, right?
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
So it's more like a superstition wise. And I tell you, people are really superstitious, right? They're
Mm.
so afraid of a spirit walking by them. Like you want to watch somebody jump out of the skin. You say, "Oh, there's a spirit there," and they go, they go, where?" And they say, "Oh, if you can see, I can't find it. Okay, tell them to go away." You know, like they'll do that, right? Like, yeah, they're so afraid of it coming into their boundaries and messing with them instead of just ignoring it, right? Like they're like people in every house make boundaries. Like they don't want anything crossing their boundaries. Like they'll say, "No, you can't cross this boundary. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that." In fact, even our house, my son created a little thing so that spirits can't cross the boundaries in our home. Right? So yeah, even my son did that. Uh-huh. Yeah. He's just as he's he's uh he's a clairvoyant, but I think I think I think he gets more freaked out than I do. Okay, I'm more level I'm more okay, let's see what we can do with. He goes, "No, you have to do this. You have to." I go, "Oh, God, calm down." Like, I think most of the people are like that right here, right, Amanda? Like they're going, like, yeah, like it's okay. You need a dose. You need to swig up. You need to smoke more marijuana because you're just going, like, yeah. They're just going absolutely bonkers if you tell them that there's a ghost
Oh
hanging
god.
around. Yeah, they'll go, "Get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it." They'll do that.
Is
But
there
where
any
the
place like you learned a history on, but then when you went to go see it, it wasn't what you expected to see?
yeah, you're kind of disappointed.
Yeah, I was gonna say disappointed, but like, I don't want to say disappointed, but I guess let down. I'm not even sure if that's a good word to put for any location, but it just wasn't.
Like,
Like
oh,
you think something else in your head, you go there and you're like,
oh
oh,
my
that's
God, like
yeah,
things like
this
that,
is
right?
it.
You're kidding.
Um, I'm trying to think.
Not really, right?
I don't know. I'm trying to
It
think.
doesn't have to be disappointing, but it could have been like,
It could
I
be
didn't
like
expect it to
it
look like
wasn't
this.
what you expected of it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be disappointing.
No, it could be. Oh, okay.
Not like I don't. I look at places like when I was researching. I don't look at places as kind of how they kind of are for tourists, similar to each other. Like, how can I explain it? I look at places individually and see how they relay their history just as kind of important. It's very hard to explain for me. Like
Through
I
your eyes, you see things differently. Is that what you're trying to say?
yeah, like when I'm visiting these sites, I appreciate each
Mm-hmm.
kind of aspect of what's being done. Like there was um like the house linked to Fred and Rosemary West.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of been knocked down. And they
Oh
turned
shucks! Right.
it, yeah, they turned it into a pathway. So you like, so they knocked the house down, and you can literally just, it's a pathway. So the house is not there anymore. And I kind of get that because they didn't want people visiting the house as a tourism aspect, because that's where the murders happened. There were several people buried in the basement. There were people buried in the
Oh.
garden. But then also, like, I get that, the gruesome aspect, but then like I'm thinking there's nothing here around here to remember the girls who they
Who?
killed. Not
Yeah. Yeah.
not the aspect of the gruesome murders of what was committed by the two infamous people, but I'm looking
Well,
at girls, like their lives have been taken away from
yeah.
families, and I'm thinking, well, where is something like, we have memorials to people who have died in disasters and stuff and whatnot, and people set up kind of
Mm-hmm.
places where people have died to like
Mm-hmm.
grieve and stuff. But there was kind of really nothing like, and there's to remember these women have all who have all been killed by them.
Yeah.
I still think they should be something to remember them
Like
getting
yeah.
life.
Like something got shortchanged here. Like they got killed for nothing, and
Yeah.
nobody really cares about them because their life goes on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just as important. Like I know, like you look at the Jack the Ripper case
Yeah.
in England, everybody's fascinated by taking the tours and learning the aspect of how these
What
girls,
he did,
yeah,
but
what he did.
but
Yeah,
the victims that he took, nobody really thought about them, right? So it's almost like, you know, everyone's memorizing the killer, but what about the victims? Like
yeah, yeah.
there's nothing there's nothing there, right?
That is literally
Wasn't
it.
it because of their occupation though?
Uh, it shouldn't matter about their occupation. They were still people, right?
There's
They were
still people, but I know why some people look down on them is because of that occupation.
well, that
Yeah,
shouldn't matter.
because they were kind of women of the night, as they kind.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
literally how to describe them.
the
Um,
ladies are leading, but that shouldn't matter because they're still people, right? They they had they it was, let's put it this way: if men weren't around, they wouldn't need to have that kind of job, right?
yeah, yeah. That like,
So
oh,
yeah,
it's awful.
you
But
know,
and
so
like the other asset, like I've been on the tour, um, and they touch on kind of that kind of aspect of the Victorian kind of period and how it was to live back then and what it was like for them women, but not so much their lives. But like the Ten Bells pub that is linked to two of the women, because they would go there drinking, trying to fine kind of business.
Mhm.
That pub was called the Ten Bells Pub, and it's changed its name. But for a period of time, they tried to capitalise off the story and change the name to the Jack the Ripper Pub. And there was a kind of lot of there was a lot of campaigning because of that reason. Like they were saying, this is exploiting the women who have died. Like
Yeah,
you're capitalizing off a
a
serious,
killer.
yeah, off a
Oh,
kid.
glorifying, almost like putting him on a pedestal because he was a killer, right?
Yeah. And they ended up, it changed its name back because of this hefty campaign. Uh,
Mm.
but that is kind of places are, it's same with like even the the term dark tourism,
Mhm.
people places around Halloween and stuff
Mhm.
trying to capitalize off this term.
Mhm.
Mhm.
um and it's not,
Christmas is another one. Christmas is another one, right? It's
yeah,
a money maker. It's a money maker, right? For Christmas and Halloween, you know.
yeah, it is exactly the same. Like I think a lot of places try and capitalize off these terms and don't understand the actual meaning
Mhm.
behind it
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever get there. I think we'll never get there where they'll understand. I don't think so. It's just the way that it is, right?
I've always wondered how they taught Jack the Ripper over there compared to like the
Yeah.
US.
How do they go over there?
It was just more of a I don't know. It's just the ladies' evenings. Wasn't it? But I believe what I heard was like five victims total. They think like maybe he was a butcher or a doctor.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
way it was done.
yeah, is it the kind of same kind of aspect? They do tell the kind of same kind of story over here. I'm just having a look. I didn't know if it was. I've got it here. I couldn't remember if it was 5 or 6 victims. You know.
Mm.
I thought I heard five, but I could be wrong. It could also be what were told over there too.
I've, writ- I've
That's why I
written.
wondered if you guys had more information over there, being it happened
Mm.
over there.
I've written about so many pieces of history. I can't like. I'm
That
writing
happens.
writing over 300 places is a bit difficult to remember all the kind of history really.
But
uh
I would think that he killed more than so many women. I think I
I think
think
that's
they're.
what they found at least. At least that's
Yeah.
what was tied to him, or what they believed was him.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of
I'm
far.
not sure if it's because of the way he did it, or if he left a calling card.
Yeah, it was kind of 5 official ones. There is talks, like there is a lot of things saying, oh yes, there was many other killings by him, and a lot of unsureness, but I like they presume because of how the women were killed and like mutilated by this person, they're not, I don't know, sure of how many like actual killings took place and things. Um, but yeah, it's a very, if you go to London, it's like seen as something you've got to do. Like here, like if that's kind of what it's part of, especially around Halloween. Like if the thing is, if you haven't done the Jack the Ripper London, it's like you've not. If you've not done the Jack the Ripper tour, it's like you've not been to London.
Oh gosh. Really?
Yeah, like it's a kind of like one of them kind of aspects. You go to London, and at one point you've got to take part in the Jack the Ripper tour. That's the way, because loads of people are like, "Oh, have you been on the Jack the Ripper tour and stuff?"
So if you didn't do Jack the Ripper tour, you didn't do London right. If you visited,
Sorry.
so if you go to London, you don't do the tour, you didn't do London right.
Yeah, basically an aspect of being a tourist and going to London is going to do this kind of tour. It's same as you've got to go to kind of the Tower of London. So you visited kind of London, really. It's one of them kind of aspects.
I
But I
kind of like would I would if I would go to the Tower of London before I go to see Jack the Ripper. You know,
yeah,
I think it's my preference. I don't know.
hmm,
I think
Oh,
it's
you
my
don't want
pref.
to see if you can see Jack the Ripper, Irene? You don't want to say hi?
Uh, no, because I'd be taking part of what he did, and I'd be seeing what he did, and there's a part of me that I see enough of that, right? I don't want to see how he cuts a woman from the nape to the, no. Because I'd be seeing that right in front of my eyes, and I don't know if I could handle that.
very gruesome.
Yeah, like when I see something, the way I see things is I could see the guy doing it to whomever the victim in his face and how he doesn't like no 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 I don't want to go there no no
Like
no.
Link Jack the Ripper place is like there was a. It's that kind of the whole part of Jack the Ripper has caused a lot of controversy because there was like a simple museum that was going that was opening in London in the Whitehill Chapel area, and it was seen as that before it opened, it was going to tell kind of women's kind of lives like back in that kind of period and nothing to do with Jack the Ripper. And it was going to be looked at as how it was for women and how they like jobs and things and whatnot and back in the day. And then like this after they took kind of the like scaffolding down, it revealed this museum to Jack the Ripper, and then it caused a lot of controversy within that kind of area, um, because it wasn't described as what it was meant to be, but
mm, it is what it is, right?
mm,
Right.
Yeah, you can't be you can't be with everybody else, and everybody else can't be with everybody else, and they can't agree with that one thing or another. There's always going to be something there that's uh inhumane, right? And like, duh, we want to make money, and like we want to show this, and we're gonna make a lot of money, and we want to have a lot of tourism. We want to have this and that there, and they go, oh, okay, like, like whoopee ding, right? Oh gosh, so you're gonna have all that there too. I think there's a lot of internal politics with making that thing too.
yeah,
Uh, I from our aspect of it, we see things a little bit differently, right? Uh,
Mhm.
we we talk about the victims, we talk about the gruesomeness, we talk about the residual energy that goes with it, right?
right,
Uh,
yeah,
that's how ours is kind of like out there, and everyone else is over here. So having them to see how we feel, like they're gonna say, "You're nuts." Right? They're not gonna quite agree with us, that Amanda. They're
Yeah.
they're really not gonna care how we think
mm,
until something scary happens and they say help. Like, we're gonna say, what do you expect, right? You did this and that and that. Of course that's gonna happen, right? And they go, didn't think of that. Well, you should have thought of that before you even did that, right?
so true.
Uh, it's just part of it creates more work for for paranormal investigators because of whatever they created or whatever they built because of that. And of course it's going to create a lot of resentment, and of course it's going to create a lot of hauntings. Of course it's going to invite in a lot of spirits that maybe you're not going to say they're good, you're not going to say they're bad either, right? you know
Yeah,
it it could create a lot of whoops. And they'll say whoops. They're like, I didn't think that would happen. Well, of course you didn't think of that happen. You're kind of like blah in the head, right? Because, but who am I going to tell you? I'm not going to tell you. Who am I to say, right?
Is there places you've learned the history before, but when you went there, you found out what you knew? They sugarcoated what you learned before. When you get there, it's more gruesome than what you knew before.
Um, yeah, I think it comes like each place, like even before I visited, I've done research on places. Like when I've been working with the places in my book to write their history and stuff on,
Mm-hmm.
I've like read about them online, and then I've gone. Um, and while they do, like the history is like what I've read is kind of right to what then they're telling me and stuff. It's how it's kind of relayed, really, and how that makes the difference. I think it can be interpreted differently.
Mm-hmm.
You can read, like, going to the Tower of London and
Yeah.
read about it is totally different. Like, you can read about it online, but then visiting, they can turn the history into more gruesomeness than
Mm.
about it. Like the whole kind of experience when visiting the Tower of London,
Mm-hmm.
is
Mhm.
they wanted you to feel like a crowd that was taking part in an execution while he was telling you
Mm-hmm.
the history.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I think
I
that
think they put more drama in it, right? And make it more dramatic.
they make it more kind of dramatic. So, well, yeah, I knew kind of the kind of factual history aspects and stuff. Yeah, they did make it more kind of dramatic.
Than what it really was.
I don't know. It was. I don't. I believe it was dramatic kind of periods, like
Mm-hmm.
some of the institutions, like having thousands of people there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. It's not the same as just reading it and stuff and whatnot, to taking a part in a tour and stuff. I think there's been within England, like within Britain, I think there's been this kind of, because places have been criticised for getting their factual history wrong over time.
Mm.
I think there's been this, like, over probably the last probably 10, 15 years, I
Mm-hmm.
think in a lot more research that's taking place
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
on the events of places. Like there's a lot more historians and a lot more attractions that are like, we don't want to give out the wrong information, and we don't want it to be perceived incorrectly and stuff.
Yeah.
There's been a lot more time taken into making sure that whatever is being told is told within the right manner
Mm-hmm.
and not done right, because a lot of places over the period years have been criticised for that.
Mm.
Like they kind of sugarcoating kind of element and stuff and what.
Mm-hmm. And
Like,
make it more glorified or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Like I think there's 100 different write-ups of King Henry VIII. Okay, which one do you believe? Like you have to pick and choose. Like right, which one do you think is right? Which one do you think is more dramatic? Which one do you think is like you don't know what to choose? Right, you don't know which one to pick. And like Anne Boleyn's story, um, King Henry VIII, um, all his wives, all the wives that died, all the wives that were beheaded. Like which story is actually accurate, right? It's like you have to find out for yourself, and there's no way that you can. I don't know if there's a way you can research it. I don't know if there's a way you can say, yeah, this person's more accurate than that person, right? But how do we know?
Mhm.
yeah. Like there's a lot of places that are more I think like there's one place like I've written about in my book, and they do like I do praise them because while they could turn around and say that like there's a place called the Coffin Works Museum in Birmingham, and it's made the fittings for the coffins for the royal like kind of family members and things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. And it might, because royal coffins are made years in advance and
Yeah.
planned and whatnot, they could have made, because they've now closed down, they could have, it's now a museum, they could have made the royal fittings for the Queen's coffin, but it's not 100% adamant on that. They could turn around and take the credit on that, but obviously won't. They've said it is a possibility we've made the fittings for the Queen's coffin, but we can't be 100% certain on that.
Yeah.
And I praise more attractions like that where they're open and honest
Mm-hmm.
than just being like, oh, well, actually, we'll just take the credit for it because nobody
Yeah.
else is taking the credit for it. Because a
Yeah.
lot will just take the credit for something because another place is not taking the credit.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I praise places more on that where they're open and honest at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe that they have double lined coffins. Like one is regular and one is lead, right?
Yes.
Where would they make that? Would they make that within that area?
I don't know. I don't know.
That like yeah, see, you know that creates more. Okay, like yeah, I don't know either. Like where, like like that's another question with a question with a question, right?
Yeah, I think that is a question with a question. He's,
When you find out, tell me.
One thing I'm curious on about the UK, so I know in the States, we have obviously Salem, Massachusetts, where it was like the witch trials happened. They made it more now of like a tourist attraction. Is it the same way for, I believe, the closest thing you guys have is Pendle Hill? You had witch trials there. Is
yeah.
that
So you're talking about Salem and Penn, like the similar Pendle Hill.
yeah? Oh, you guys had like the witch trials in Pendle Hill.
Yeah, that's a very that took place. That's within my book, and yeah, it's obviously a moment in obviously time where a number of women were obviously accused of witchcraft and died and things, and they're not. I don't know what the kind of. Haven't looked into how they've dealt with the Salem kind of aspect so much in the US. I know there's a memorial, isn't there?
Oh, there's Salem is basically one huge now tourist attraction where they have like obviously the witch museum and basically a lot of things dedicated to the witch. I mean, because it's Salem, that's like the
Yeah,
biggest gimmick you're gonna have over there.
and especially during Halloween, right?
Halloween is so terrible that I knew people, two different groups of people go there in 2 different years, and they all said the same thing. You can't park anywhere. You have to have reservations to get in anywhere. Like if you have reservations for one place, just trying to park, or even if you have to park far away and walk, you have to leave at least 2 hours before your reservation just to be able to get there on time.
Or even get a hotel room, right?
Oh, you know that's marked up though, and they're probably all sold out month of October. They said October is just overly crowded.
Yeah.
God, I don't. It's not so much like that with Pendle Hill. Yeah, it's a well-known aspect of English history, and I think they've kind of woven the elements together. Like there is a memorial to Alice Nutter, and kind of Lancaster Castle was obviously where the witches were kind of held and stuff and imprisoned, and obviously they have got the village kind of where they lived and stuff, and they have woven the elements together. You can do, I think it's like a car tour from like the village, like, and it will take you through like where they was lived, where I think maybe some of them are buried, and then where like the memorial is, and it will take you up to the castle. But it's not as big as Salem. uh, I think like probably
It's
it's,
crazy.
yeah, I could have
Yeah.
capitalized off the whole kind of aspect and the story and its history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's well known, and people, yes, if you go into Lancaster Castle, people know of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think there's more of, with our kind of story of Pendle Hill, there's kind of, I don't know how it is in Salem, but there's kind of more like a somber kind of experience for those who were accused and were killed.
Mhm.
More respectful.
Yeah, more respectful, I think, because I think they look at it that over here, like here, is basically if something went wrong, and I don't know, it was a hot summer and there wasn't enough water to water the crops, people were just accused of witchcraft at the end of the day. Probably like how Japan is, it's very superstitious place. Back then, England was a very superstitious place. It was being fueled with superstition from the king and stuff.
Yeah.
And villages and stuff was very superstitious. So if something went wrong, if
It's the witch's fault. Right.
yeah, it was the witch's fault. If cattle died, it was the witch's fault. If
Yeah.
the wouldn't come from cows, then oh, it must be a witch.
Yeah. Or
And
somebody died of a fever. Oh, that's the witch's fault. Or the witches played a curse on it, or whatever dumb things
yeah,
they can think of. Right.
that's what it stems from, is that one of the girls muttered a curse under her breath, and the person she muttered the curse to died.
Mm.
And then she was accused of witchcraft. So there's that kind of element is being showed more, kind of the accusation kind of part to this story. Yes, they will share kind of the women's lives, kind of the execution and stuff and whatnot, but they will kind of highlight throughout kind of the whole periods of time women are accused and stuff and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you think because I'm not gonna use this word that particularly. There's no kind of way to say it. Would you think because educational wise, because people didn't know any better, they blamed it on the witch, right? Or I don't know, because they're simple. I don't know.
I don't know. It was a very, back then, like, I think like fuel. It was just fueled by a superstitious kind of society. At the end of the day, if something went wrong, somebody was to blame at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we had our witches here too, but there's no particular place where they were executed, because they don't want to tell you.
Oh right.
There's no. I could tell you what happened, but then we have to make this PG. Um, yeah, because it's really bad. Um, Long time ago, men were the only people who were claimed as doctors in Japan, right?
Yeah.
So they'd use herbs, right? And you drink this with your tea, and it'll help you with your symptoms, right? If you got a cold or if you have a fever or whatever, right? Women were known as midwives, right? Where they just delivered babies, right? But if a woman gave a man, a sick person, or her, whether it's a man, a woman, or if it was man, or woman, a child, it doesn't matter. If they gave a baby, if they gave a child a herb, or if they give a sick woman a herb, or if they give a sick man a herb, you'd be labeled as a witch.
Which,
Yeah. And
That's
if you were caught by the samurai, you'd be killed. Your children would be killed.
mm,
So they wouldn't come back and say, "You killed my mother." And the
mm,
way you'd be killed would be burnt at the stake.
right.
that was the same thing they did for people who were
Yeah,
samurais that were killed going against the emperor. Is they didn't
yeah,
want
yeah,
any of the family members, even including children, to
yeah.
one day try and seek revenge.
So
Revenge.
you, so they killed the witch, of course, alive, and they burnt the witch alive, and they burnt the children alive. But the only people that were spared were the husbands, because like they don't want. I'm not gonna touch them. I'm not gonna do that, right?
But that's
Because they're not
it's
docile.
not so much like I don't know how like that's what kind of for like religion aspects, that's what probably it was like back when the witches of Pendle Hill, like it was okay for religious institutions to give out certain things and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but if a woman did it, like you said, like they'd be labelled as a witch
Yeah.
at the end
Yeah.
of it. It
Yeah.
was okay. So I think that's another aspect of what fueled it is religion in
Mm-hmm.
stuff in
Mm-hmm.
the in society. But yeah, that if you look at certain things
Mm-hmm.
like um there was there's a memorial to like this gentleman called the Last Death Eater, and change the story a little bit. He would consume basically bread and I think is it wine over the deceased of people. So basically, he was employed by I don't know a family of a dead relative, and he would basically consume kind of bread and wine, and it was meant to believe that um, that would take away the person's sins, this dead person's sins, and they would make it to heaven and stuff and whatnot, because he would be consuming their sins through this bread and wine, and he would be eating over this body. But
But guess what? The
that,
church does that to this day. They
yeah,
consume bread and they drink wine, right?
yeah, basically, it was looked at that only the church could really perform such act at the end of the day, and it wasn't
Right.
looked at as okay.
Yeah, so there
Yeah,
you go. Ha ha
this
ha.
very much shunned out and things.
Yeah. And, like the you when you if you say that to a person like this is what they did a long time ago, you'd say nah, and they say yes it did. Yes it did happen, right?
Mm.
They'll say nah, they wouldn't believe you, right? It's astonishing. Oh, history has a way of. Well, that's what they do now in churches. They drink wine and they eat the bread, right? The
Yeah,
host is the bread, right? Yeah, there you go. Uh-huh. So what's so different about back then and now? I think it's the same thing. You
yeah,
just you're just doing it differently. That's all. We're calling it differently. I think, right, Amanda?
Yeah.
It's kind of like ha ha ha, like the ha ha moment. Um, yeah, I, it's. But you see, now in Japan, guess what? There are more women doctors in Japan now than men. So, so talk about the witch factor, right? Ha 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 ha. Oh, that one too. So, like,
right, just don't.
there you go, right?
Leon, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
And you can, if someone wanted to find your book, they can find it on Amazon.
Yeah, they can find it on Amazon if they
Can
wish.
you show us the cover of the book? Oh,
Yeah.
Dark Attractions. I gotta get one. I gotta get a copy.
It's a
You find
very
it on Amazon.
illustrated kind of book, and designed kind of with lots of kind of pictures, maps, and things. I'm just trying to show you one of the text pages.
Oh, my husband would like that book too.
Yeah, a lot of people who watch our show would love a book like that. That's why I found it
It's
on.
like just loads of kind of places. Yeah, death and tragedy and suffering and things. So yeah, it's a very textual kind of visually appealing book at the end of the day, and that's what I wanted to achieve at the end of the day. Like, I had a particular artist work on a particular drawing that I feature within my book.
Mm.
So yeah, there's kind of loads of different aspects.
Are you going to be making another book? Are you going to be writing another book soon?
I'm working on a number of aspects with my designers. I can't say too much.
Okay. Well,
So
overall.
yeah, I had 3 designers work on this book. Yeah, it took a little while. It took like a good about 2 years to design it.
Mm.
Because it was kind of putting it together like a puzzle piece. So yeah, but we're working on other aspects.
Ooh, it'd be
We're looking
interesting.
forward to it.
Yeah, and you got to come back on again. We got to talk about it, right?
Yeah,
Because we always like the dark stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't know
You
what it is, but
we're
we're
not into
expecting
the
that
we're
kind of
not
stuff.
into the flowery stuff. We're not into the rose bush stuff. We're into thorns of the rose bush.
Yes, that's more interesting.
That's what we are.
Yeah.
Call us crazy, call us different, whatever. We'll take it. We're being normal. This is what our normal is like, right?
Anyways, thank you again for joining us.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for taking time this morning to talk to us and showing us your book and sharing your interesting stories with us. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
No,
And everyone else out there, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
See you next time. Bye for
Bye
now.
bye.